The feeling of being there, of walking the streets of the future, is really going to be breathtaking. You're breathtaking. You're all breathtaking.
Hey everyone, Sean here, and today I wanted to make this video regarding to E3. One of the things that was, well, keyword was relevant to me at least, and of course many gamers over the years, and it was something people have dreamed of going, but over the years it's become apparent that it's that sort of desire or magic has waned away from relevancy. And now people have different means to be able to be told about the latest gaming news from individual companies anyway. But I wanted to sit down and talk about my whole thoughts and everything else and ramblings and whatever about E3. But before I get into that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Really appreciate it, guys. So anyway, E3 has for those who have not known already, has been canceled for this year. Now, does that mean it is canceled forever? Not necessarily, but they plan to come back next year when things are more likely to be better. With the coronavirus and stuff like that starting to wane down noticeably, but it seems to be coming back up again for certain areas or regions, unfortunately. But that's just the situation we're still in right now. So I guess that's why E3 wanted to not only have that in mind, but they wanted to put their resources into next year's show. So that's pretty much how they explain things. But it just seems like to me that there are a lot more things to it than that. But I wanted to go over what E3 made it so special in the first place, at least to me anyway. E3 was pretty much the only, it's like the big premiere of video game news and reveals and such like that for over many years and probably many decades at this point. It was kind of like video game Christmas in a way. We get to know all about the video games, the major ones. There have been many moments that have been memorable. A lot of memes have been sort of unintentionally spawned from that, including "My Body Is Ready," by Reggie, Phil's on me, who formerly was the president of Nintendo of America. But moments like that have been iconic, and the last one for me anyway, the last iconic moment was Keanu Reeves just coming out to genuinely wanting to promote the game because of course he is in it. But Cyberpunk was definitely something that was going to be the next big thing until it became apparent that once the game came out, it just wasn't ready, even though they said it'll be out when it's ready. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, so they definitely blew that one. But that was pretty much the last memorable moment for me from E3, was Keanu Reeves making an appearance, and then they tried to replicate that, I think, after, but it just wasn't the same. They've had a couple of celebrities appear for a spokesperson sort of thing for several games, but again, it wasn't the same. But that's one of the major reasons as to why E3 was special. It was just kind of like that big, it had that Super Bowl pedigree kind of thing. Like it was like the top show at the time. There wasn't really much else to it when it comes to revealing and stuff like that. But it became more apparent once Nintendo started to do their directs that do we really need E3? It became apparent over time that we really don't need E3, and companies started to realize that and they started to do their own shows, after Nintendo Direct, and that included Sony with their State of Plays and such, and that was starting to become more and more apparent than ever. On top of that, there have been some business practices and management mishaps that happened over time as well, with the information leak that happened during that big hack with the ESA. They were irresponsible with people's information, and a lot of that has been leaked and sold, or whatever happened to it, across, well, the internet essentially, and that information is now in the hands of people who want to use that for, their own purposes, their own ventures, their own businesses and such. And it's all thanks to the ESA, who organized the E3 conventions. What also made it special, it was not only the reveals, but the convention floor. People wanted to go, check it out because of the booths, of how much effort they would put into these booths. It was pretty cool. And I had the privilege of being able to go twice in my lifetime before, well, E3 kind of went down in the relevancy sink. But yeah, anyway, I was able to go twice, which definitely is checked off the bucket list for sure. But let me tell you that if anyone else who really wanted to go to E3, if you already have a gaming convention in your hometown, you're better off going there, because E3 is all about the suits, it's all about the business, it's all about exchanging information, it's networking, and that's what it's kind of intended for. E3 has always been like a giant commercial, kind of like the Academy Awards, Game Awards, and a lot of those things. And it's really not about the gamers themselves, even though it was kind of like, it felt like it was passionate towards gaming, but it was mostly about the business. They wanted to bring in the media, they wanted to bring in these men in suits, or people in suits I should say, and get their promotions across. It was just a giant commercial for everyone, and people had to pay space for it. Now, it was cool still, despite saying that, but it's definitely an experience, and if you have a chance to go, then take it, right? But I remember at one point, it was technically open for everyone, but E3 was kind of like the cool kids club sort of thing. That's what really made E3 special. It was because it was business oriented. Only a couple few individuals were able to go, and apparently at some point YouTubers were technically part of the industry, so the standards of E3 at the time were pretty low in the grand scheme of things, and even someone like me was able to be qualified, especially if you're partnered with the MCN at the time, which I was partnered with Machinima. So had I known that, I would have gone to a couple more E3s, but that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna harp on it too much. That's just me, and maybe it might have been for the better, because I feel like I'm too young and might do some stupid things at E3, so that might have put me on the ban list. Maybe, I don't know. You just never know with these things, because when you're young, you tend to do some wild things, and as you get older, you kind of start to look back on things and kind of have a very different perspective on things. Anyway, so I was able to go, and my experiences were overall pleasant, but the second time I went, it became really apparent that there's not a whole lot of things to do, and because of the whole business orientated sort of kind of aura it had to it, it was only cool for so long, for me anyway, and also just like, it was just like, funny enough, any other convention where you spend hours and hours and hours and waiting in lines, and you only play a video game for like, I don't know, 10 minutes at the very most, if you're very lucky, and you had to go through hundreds of people before you even get to touch the game, and so you had to really pick and choose what game you wanted to play, and on top of that, there was a lot of cool stuff in the past anyway when it comes to like merchandise, just free stuff to give away for the sake of marketing and whatever. And especially long time ago, people were able to bring truckloads of stuff back to home from E3 because of how much they were able to do from each company. But over time, E3 started to charge more for the space, for the floor space, to have these booths, even up to millions of dollars, really. So companies like Ubisoft were willing to do that. Not only that, but they had their own sort of weird studio routine thing with the dance, Let's Dance games and all the other stuff. So they were one of the big spenders of E3, essentially. Ubisoft of all companies, right? Kind of funny to look back on that, but even companies like EA started to do their own thing. They started to do their EA Play outside of E3. I remember seeing it outside the LA Convention Center, and that meant that the rest of the people who can't go to E3 were at EA Play, so it was kind of like a nice way to have the public to kind of get that convention experience, sort of, and get some stuff out of it potentially. And that's what kind of also added to the nail in the coffin sort of thing. But anyway, the convention itself was essentially like any other convention, even though people have dreamed of going to E3. And I can tell you from first-hand experience that if you have a gaming convention in your hometown, or near your hometown at least, you're way better off going there instead. And it's just so crazy of how much people were willing to go to E3, especially when those tickets were $1,000 back then. But then they started to look like not make as much money over time because of a lot of things. I'm not gonna pretend I know everything, but from what I gathered, it seemed like they had to charge more for whatever reason for the booth space. But more and more companies started to catch on that they can just do their own show, like Nintendo, for example. And even at one point, Sony pulled out from the E3 board, and they had their own thing going on. So it became all the more apparent that things were starting to really shake up for the ESA, on top of the information leak that happened at the time. So management was kind of starting to crumble quite a bit, and around that time, also they just started to open to the public. I think it was open to the public at one point, but they closed it off to trade only or whatever. It was only business or industry only. But after that, sometime during that time, around like before 2020-ish, they opened it for the public, and that really started to wane off that magic that E3 had, that uniqueness that it had in the first place. It kind of destroyed why it was kind of like a cool kids club sort of thing, but it was something. But because it was open to the public, it was super crowded, and not a whole lot of people were able to play the games they wanted for that long. It was harder for everyone, YouTubers, businessmen, whatever, the content creators. It was harder for them to get around and be able to play the games they wanted, and it was just super crowded. It was harder to get around, pretty much. So it just became really all the more apparent that E3 was kind of waning off, dying, essentially. And then came the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, and that really hit hard for everyone around the world, including E3, which definitely really showed signs that things were changing. The landscape of gaming was changing, and you know, show companies started to show their games in their own way more and more, and you know, they were able to carry on their business, because why spend millions of dollars to just get this booth space when you can just spend some money and upload a video on YouTube to reveal what you guys got for this coming year or whatever. So that was essentially the biggest reason to not go to E3 when it comes to the business side of things. So now, you know, E3 tried to do the online stuff, and while you know it was whatever, but at some point it just became more all the more apparent that it's just kind of like fading in the background now. And with them canceling the show this year, I mean, while on the surface it sounds like, yeah, they're trying to just wait for next year, they know, they are aware that the relevancy of E3 has been just super dying off, and I don't see it lasting very much longer in this given time. In the near future, I think it'll be the time for E3 to end, because again, a lot of stuff has happened, including companies catching on that they could just do their own show. And Jeff Keighley has his own thing too, you know, with the Summer Games Fest or whatever it's called. And, you know, there are a lot of factors that I haven't mentioned, of course. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but just what I've gathered, it's become super apparent that that's sort of what's happening with E3. And I definitely don't see it carry on much longer. I think it will wind down to Jeff Keighley's stuff, or companies just doing their own thing. While I will miss it, I would like to have E3 come back and do their thing. Don't get me wrong. I'll just enjoy it from the comfort of my home, because it was a very convenient way for me to get all the reveals in one week or whatever, and be surprised by it, you know, because you just because it's all bundled into one. There are just it's a better way to surprise people, and it's just it has that magic to it, you know, sort of in a way. And you know, but if companies are doing it separately, then it's harder to sort of be surprised back to back sort of thing, unless you're just willing to be okay with that now. And you know, I definitely will miss those sort of things, but if it happens, then you know, those are just signs of the times changing, which is natural in life. And you know, and it's just kind of how it goes. It kind of sucks for people who, you know, who are younger and don't want to or can't experience that anymore. You know, this is kind of how it is. If E3 doesn't come up with a way to stand out again in these times, you know, it's gonna be they're gonna pack it up forever. So I think it was a lot of factors, and definitely coronavirus definitely played a big part, but it kind of just amplified what was already happening. And so it just signs of change, you know, times are just changing, and E3 didn't really do much to adapt to it, and they're starting to become less than of a reason to be the premiere of game reveals yearly. So yes, again, you know, I do miss it. I would like to have it come back somehow, you know, full force, but it's gonna be tough. You know, it's like, again, why spend all this money when I can just do it myself for a lot less, and people are still going to come in and give their viewership for it and stuff. So that's pretty much it. So that's my thoughts and ramblings about E3 canceling for this year, but also for how much how relevant it is and what's going to happen with it and all that stuff. I'm just glad that I had my time with E3, and I kind of know what it's like, and I can tell you guys that, yeah, I mean, it's neat, but again, if you have a convention near your town, especially in the future, you're better off going there instead. I promise you. I promise you that any other convention, gaming convention, will do, because that's just what it is essentially. You know. And if you think about, if you're thinking about, oh, what about the cool stuff you get from E3? Don't. Yeah, it's you're not missing out. I promise you. So, especially for those who are out of state and stuff, that no, it's not worth it to stress over about. So, I'm not trying to shoot down people's dreams or anything like that, but I'm just giving my sort of personal take on E3 and my experiences with my physical experience with E3 and stuff like that. So, anywho, thank you very much for tuning in for this pretty much long video-ish, but I really appreciate it. If you have any comments about E3, from a spectator's standpoint, or if you've been to E3, I mean, I would love to hear those comments as well in the comment section below. But any comment about E3 will be welcomed. I'd love to read them. And that's it for the Hawke Talks episode on E3. Whether it's forever canceled or on its way out, sort of thing. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.